Hello everyone. This is a recording for your Engagement and Advocacy Lab for Chapter 1. A couple of notes as this is your first lab. I would like to draw your attention to the slides. Each slide is numbered on the bottom right. For each engagement and advocacy assignment, you will have a couple of activities. For this one, the first one is titled Disease Domain, Oncology, Chronic Pain, and Chronic Substance Abuse. This one will utilize the attached PDF on the engagement and advocacy assignment. You should see a PDF document and you'll refer to that for doing this disease domain activity. So these are the reference material information that you will need or you might find helpful as you consult the document and then look at the prompts on the next few slides. So here I gave you information on the social determinants of health as defined by Healthy People 2030. You can always Google this, Healthy People 2030, Social Determinants of Health, and you will see the different dimensions there. These dimensions are healthcare access and quality, education access and quality, social and community context, economic stability, neighborhood and built environment. Here is your prompt. When you look at that document, Disease Domain, Oncology, Chronic Pain, and Substance Abuse, attached on this assignment, identify one key attribute of SDOHs that seems specifically relevant to each of those clinical contexts. The three that you will see on that document are oncology, chronic pain, and substance use. You'll see their whole person health dimensions and the coordination of care dimensions along with a little bit of extra information. You also have the SDOHs on the previous slide. With this information, and of course consulting the chapter, here is what I'd like to hear from you. For each of these domains, oncology, chronic pain, and substance use, is it easy to just identify one key attribute of SDOH that seems relevant to this context? What would you need to include more than one SDOH? What factors went into your decision to include that SDOH attribute and not another? How is the effect of the SDOHs on health outcomes connected with each other? And how is the effect of the SDOHs on health outcomes connected with community resources? Does this differ for different populations? For every prompt on your engagement and advocacy assignments, I do not expect to hear a lot of writing. I'd like you to respond in brief and just include the title of that activity. So in this case, you would include disease domain, oncology, chronic pain, and substance use. And then for each of these, oncology, and then for chronic pain, and then for substance use, you look at the SDOHs and the attached document and respond to these in a brief phrase or sentence. The second prompt for this engagement and advocacy assignment for Chapter 1 focuses on the disease domain for cardiovascular diseases and their relationship with social determinants of health-related disparities. This slide gives you some background information on CVDs, which is cardiovascular diseases, and SDOH related disparities. So it tells you that CVDs are the leading cause of mortality and morbidity globally, and that people of color bear a disproportionate burden of CVD related morbidity and mortality, and additionally have poor disease outcomes. And I give you a reminder of the 5 key SDOHs again as identified by Healthy People 2030. And we understand that there is a need for understanding what are the barriers to CVD health as they relate to health disparities and who is specifically affected. Here is more background information, and it gives you a little bit more by racial differences in socioeconomic determinants that are associated with poor cardiovascular health and quality of life. And it tells you about Black and Hispanic employees and how they can experience insecurity at a disproportionate level, and also how they have increased psychosocial occupational stressors stemming from low job control, long commutes, and high work-related stress. And these psychosocial occupational stressors are strong predictors of CVD risk factors such as diabetes and hypertension. And increasing awareness of CVD risk factors is one way of addressing health-related disparities. Media messages can play a powerful role in supporting the goals of whole person health communication in this regard. We also learn from our chapter that reflexivity is important. So I ask you to analyze a promotional media message about cardiovascular health. This message could be an advertisement, a campaign, a product marketing, infomercial, a branding message, or an organizational message. So I ask you to analyze this for inclusivity. You can learn more about inclusivity from the chapter. And I ask you to conduct an online search for these messages, anyone focused on CV health, and look at inclusivity. By which populations do they predominantly seem to address and who is left out? Then I ask you to take one of those messages and modify it to include one of the populations that is underrepresented. So you could, for example, share your thoughts on the image, on the text, on the background, characteristics of that image, or whatever is going on in your promotional message. And then I ask you to write a small phrase or sentence on how are you being reflexive about including WPHC criteria in the health communication message. Then I ask you to understand or explain how the media message supports the goals of whole person health communication, or has a gap in addressing key factors, and how might you redesign the message? The next prompt focuses on healthy neighborhoods. There is some background information that healthy neighborhoods are also characterized by their SDOH dimensions through healthcare access and quality, education access and quality, social and community context, economic stability, and their neighborhoods and built environment. I ask you to think, what conditions must a neighborhood fulfill to support good health for all from the whole person health communication perspective? So a neighborhood is not a single unitary entity. It comprises several interrelated components. What might be a picture of a healthy neighborhood? What all would it include? How should the neighborhood factors be interrelated in their effect on the health of residents for good health for all? Once you think through that, respond to the following prompts. What would a neighborhood that provides a healthy environment for its residents look like? What are some elements that a healthy neighborhood must have? What are some elements that the neighborhood could have should resources permit? How will the neighborhood meet the whole person needs of people of all ages? The last prompt looks at substance use disorders. The prompt says, give an example of one communication initiative for each of the following communication contexts in the domain of substance use. So the communication contexts are campaigns, public relations material, media material, or a workplace promotional or communication material. How do they communicate substance use disorders? And which social justice principle can you highlight for the way these communication contexts have communicated substance use disorder information? Again, as for all health engagement and advocacy assignment prompts, I just need a brief bulleted response for each of the prompt bullets. I do not look for more detail than that, but I would like you to respond to each of those little bullets in brief. So one complete sentence will suffice for each of the bullets. Thank you.